Hello, hey everyone. I know there's probably no one in here right now, but welcome to this week's weekly wrap up. It's been a long day for me, to say the least. I've been working since 6 o'clock this morning, so apologies if I look a little more wrecked than usual. Not a huge amount to talk about this week, just because I had some other work stuff to do, but mainly manga to talk about so far. So hopefully it will be somewhat interesting to everyone who decides to pop in. Before I get into any of that, just because literally no one is here. So, yeah, today was kind of a longish day. And okay, so last weekend, both Saturday and Sunday, my sister and I ended up having 2 days where we had Korean barbecue and then followed by bingsu, which is the Korean dessert. Wonderful, lovely, delicious. But 2 days in a row, oh my god, I was kind of over it a little bit. And then today after work, my sister called me and was like, "Do you want to come over to her friend's house, who is Korean, for dinner? Mom and Dad are coming, and we're all going to be there." I'm like, "All right." And I knew it'd be Korean barbecue because that's what he makes, because he is Korean, and he actually went with us, my sister and I, the last Saturday, because we went to a restaurant for Korean barbecue. So much Korean barbecue, and then we got home, and I was getting a bottle of water from the fridge, and I opened the fridge, and I said to my sister, "Oi, did your friend bring us tiramisu again?" He left tiramisu. Like, oh my god, boy. I love tiramisu, but like, he's a bad influence. He brings food, and food that is like a sometimes food. But he brings it more often than sometimes. I'm like, no, I'm so weak. So yes, I've had a lot of delicious Korean food recently. Bingsu, tiramisu. Hi, Bizarre. Thanks for popping in. If you've never had Korean barbecue, I highly recommend it. It is delicious. Yeah. Whether that be Korean barbecue or also Korean fried chicken is really, really popular. We had that as well tonight. We had a lot of food tonight, so I'm full. Tiramisu is wonderful, by far one of my favorite desserts ever. Oh my goodness. Many a year ago now, probably over 15 years ago now, when I was a mere child, I had the best tiramisu in Rome. Went to like a tiny little restaurant behind the Spanish Steps, and the food was delicious, and the tiramisu was out of this world. But yeah, so it's been a pretty maybe busy week, more so because I just didn't have the time to spend on reading comparatively to the last couple weeks. Oh my gosh, I did manage to finish a novel from my personal collection. And I have a whole bunch of manga to talk about. I read quite a bit of library manga, and also a new manga that I actually bought. Okay, also my other thing, and I'm sure I will go into this in my whole video at the end of the month, but I finally decided to go to the local-ish like pop culture store. It's about 20-25 minutes away from where I live, and I noticed them before. It's quite near a large shopping mall. It's not in the mall, but it's sort of across the road. And you can't really miss it. It's a purple frontage with a green sign. So I was like, oh, I should check that out. And I'd seen their website a couple times. So I was like, I should actually go in and see like what they have, because normally bookstores here, or at least in my experience, they have a lot of the Viz Shonen Jump titles because obviously they're popular when we're talking about manga. Viz Shonen Jump stuff, and a couple of like Kodansha and maybe Yen Press titles, stuff that's really popular. Black Butler is a good example, or Noragami, or Ghost in the Shell, or Battle Angel Alita, stuff like that. That's has sort of a larger reach. You don't get a lot of the smaller titles and a lot of the like. I don't think I've ever seen a Seven Seas release in store in like one of the large chain bookstores. So I wanted to go see what their manga range was like at this local comic book store, and to my excitement they actually had a whole bunch of stuff that I wasn't expecting. They had a whole bunch of Seven Seas stuff, Yen Press, Kodansha, the whole gamut, plus of course like the popular stuff, the My Hero Academias and the Tokyo Ghouls and the this, that, whatever else. Obviously not what I was personally looking for, but I was really great seeing it there. Welcome to everyone who's joined us. Hi Aisha, thanks for popping in. But I was really happy that I finally went. And to answer your question, Zach, I will put it up here. We don't, I mean, local comic book stores, I would say, do have a larger variety. But the chain bookstores, for one, we don't have a huge amount of chain bookstores left, unfortunately. We have Dimmicks, but I do not know. I haven't been to a Dimmicks in forever. We have Queensland Bookstore, KB, whatever their thing is, which has, again, like pretty general Viz stuff and like the popular titles from Kodansha. It's like Fairy Tail and some of the big shonen stuff. And do we even have other bookstores here? I don't even remember. So yeah, not really a huge amount of variety generally. It is a more specific like comic book stores and where that sell, Cape comics and independent comics and graphic novels and have a manga section that you will see more variety in. But for me, a lot of those stores are in the city, in the CBD, which is the central business district here, which is kind of out of my way. It's probably a good hour's drive for me, and so it's a little bit inconvenient. So I was really happy that I was able to find this more local pop culture store that did have a whole bunch of stuff that I was either reading or wanting to read, wanting to pick up. Some stuff that surprised me. Thank you for staying up, Bizarre. I know it's late. Well, it's late for me. It's early for a lot of you guys, but I know also work-wise and timing-wise it is a little bit odd for a lot of people. But I was really, because I tweeted a couple of days ago that I didn't think I'd have a huge manga haul, and I still don't think I will have a lot of books to show off at the end of the month because I haven't been spending a lot. I just haven't really had the money or the time. But I was, because visiting that store, and I think I will go back there on Monday, that I will be able to pick up some more titles. So I will have more than 3 books, which is what I was tweeting about. I had the one book that I got from the secondhand book bazaar, which was Drops of God, random volume of Drops of God, and then 2 pre-orders, one which was the end of a series that I talked about last week in my wrap-up, and then the debut in print of another series which I've been following for a long time on the Viz Shonen Jump app. So not a lot of variety then, but since then I have been able to get these books, and hopefully I have read one of the 4 or 5. One of them I've also read previously digitally. So I'll have more to talk about. But now I should actually talk about the books that I read this week. So like always, if you're new to the stream, I tend to read both a mix of prose, like novels, and manga throughout the week. Whenever I finish a library book, I want to read novel. And I will follow that up with a novel from my personal library that I haven't yet read. So last week I read 2 library books and 1 personal book that I own book. So I had to. Oh, you guys are so sweet. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I do try to. I mean, they're books that I wanted to get anyway, so it's not really an issue too much. But so I decided to read a book that I had this is an interesting one. So this is I Was a Potato Oligarch by John Mull. So pretty typical. If we've come to know my reading habits, I like travelogue, I like humorous and nonfiction stuff. So John Mull has written a couple other nonfiction travelogue stuff. Mind Your Manners was his first book, and then he also wrote another book called It's All Greek to Me, which was obviously about him traveling in Greece, which I've never read either of his previous books. This one is about his time spent in Russia. He in his time spent in Russia in the early 90s. So right after the breakdown of the Soviet bloc. So right when Russia was becoming a democracy, being introduced to capitalism, leaving communism behind, as it were. So John Mull, before he got into writing, before he kind of quit his job and decided to go live his life in a different way, he was a banker at one of the very high leading banks in England. And he worked in banking in the Middle East. He's been all around. But so he was invited to Russia by a Russian to give like business presentations about business management to people in Russia who may be interested in this, because obviously he had a background in banking and business management, and also international relations between various countries and cultures. That's what his first book, Mind Your Manners, was about the cultural differences and nuances between various European countries. But so when he's in Russia, it's partially about his attempts to found a chain of like fast food, quote unquote, baked potato restaurants, because obviously Russia has a lot of potatoes, and in the 70s and 80s, baked potatoes were sort of the fast food, drunk food of Britain at the time. So it was sort of a tried and true method. So that was like, he was bringing this idea, and his Russian friends were like really excited about this, but he because of the issues of this changing society, of a whole community, a whole country who wasn't really familiar with the idea of capitalism, of still trying to just shake off the last dregs of communism. They really don't. There's no support system for any of this to be done. The agricultural industry is just like a mess. The whole governmental system is just a mess. And it's a look into not only Russia changing as a country during this period, but also a look into the people of Russia and the old generation who grew up in the Soviet bloc, who are like tried and true communists, and that's all they've ever known, versus this younger generation who are able to see the opportunities that opening up and the breakdown of the Soviet bloc and bringing in capital and business and like owning your own business and being able to support it via like national means without a governmental oversight. is really, really interesting. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it says here travels and travails in the new Russia, and it really was like the new Russia. This was like he was in Russia in like 92, 93, so literally just a few years after the breakdown of the USSR. A lot of the Soviet countries still hadn't even gotten independence at this point. So yeah, it's really interesting. This one, you can maybe see it's a little bit beat up, but this book I didn't buy it. So at my university, which I am no longer at, obviously, I've graduated, but there was sort of reading areas, and with the expectation of like you can leave a book there, you can pick up a book and just like mix and match and take whatever you wanted. This was a book from there. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, there's not really a point necessarily aside from this whole change in the country and then comparatively to the rest of the world in the 90s, how the West was influenced, and also the change from the fear of the communist Russia and the Soviet USSR, and their changing relationship with Europe and the Americas and things like that. And ultimately, this idea didn't pan out. Just too many things. But it doesn't mean that he didn't have success in Russia, and it came from a very unexpected place. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting book. As I mentioned, I've never read any of John Mull's other stuff, but it's quite dry humor, very British humor, which is great because that's I enjoy that. And it's a little bit like, it's so interesting to see how much Russia has changed since the 90s, and in other ways, how much it's stayed the same. I've never personally been to Russia. I'd love to go one day after the global pandemic. One day. I hope to reach there at some point. But it's a really interesting country, very interesting historically, social, politically. There's any country that sort of has a long history of revolution is pretty interesting. France is another one where you can compare their trajectory of society and governance versus countries that still have a monarchy or never had any of that and established a democracy pretty early on. But yeah, I Was a Potato Oligarch by John Mull. I mean, if you're into travelogue, this isn't a bad one. If you're interested in Russia, it's not a bad one to read. Also, like, complete coincidence that I read another book about Russia. I just read the Constantine one. I don't purposefully go out of my way to do that, I promise. That seems to be the way it is. But yeah, so that was the only novel that I read this week. As I said, I didn't read a huge amount of novels just because I didn't have a huge amount of time. I had work and some other stuff. I mean, it's freelance stuff and it's pro bono stuff, so I'm not getting paid, unfortunately. But I get what I can take. But it's meant that I haven't had the time to dedicate to reading like I have been the last couple weeks. Aisha says, I'd love to visit Russia specifically for the ballet. And I mean, hey, absolutely. St. Petersburg is, the crux of the ballet, and the Bolshoi. This is I mean, French invention, but the Russians definitely perfected the whole thing. And that's sort of a kind of funny thing that goes back to this book. He's dragged to the ballet like 4 times. And he's like, I'm not into the ballet, but this is what we do. This is what we do in Russia. When you're in Russia, you go to the ballet and enjoy it. But after that, I decided to read some of the manga, continue some manga that I'd been wanting to read or have been reading the last couple weeks. The first one being, of course, sports popular series Slam Dunk. So I read volume 16. And isn't the lighting so much better? I not so much glare. 16, 17, which is the Viz release. Volume 18. Volume 19 and volume 20. So 2/3 of the way through. This is a 31 volume series. Pretty much all of these volumes are the finals or the semi-finals or whatever, trying to get into the finals. I don't know what the competition is called. They're playing basketball. They play a lot of basketball. Although I think it's only 2 games that are covered in these 5 volumes, I should say. I've said this before, it took me a little while to like warm up to this series. I didn't hate it, but I don't know. I think it was a mixture of reading the Changyi release because, okay, bless their heart, they tried. I don't want to disparage the Singaporean team, right? But it's not necessarily a great localization translation. The fact that these teenage boys, half of whom are delinquents, keep saying darn, like, darn, this sucks. I'm like, that is, I don't think that's what they would be saying. I mean, that maybe that's just me, but the darn doesn't seem like what a 16-year-old boy who fights people when he's upset would be saying when he's frustrated at a basketball game. Yeah, a lot of characters have their time to shine. What's his name? Sakuragi is kind of not in this first couple books, because he's off doing other things. I say off doing other things. He slept in and missed the game. It's quite funny. I'm still like kind of clueless when it comes to basketball. I don't think I'll ever get that invested in basketball, but the art has had a huge upgrade. In a way, really improved over the course of the series. The characters are all really likable, and that's another thing. It took me a little while to, I guess, warm up to these characters. Not that they were boring or anything. I don't know. I think I need something a bit more. And here we really see a lot of them fleshed out. Okay, also, like, okay, Xiangyu. So look at, okay, Viz release, pretty typical Viz release. All of the dialogue is in like the all caps font, right? Pretty solid translation, little incidental sound effects and things like that. Right. That pretty typical manga. Exactly what you would expect. Standard. Changyi release. Okay, this is the thing that like annoys me the most. I gotta find a spot where they're not yelling, because when they're yelling, it's in all caps. When they're not yelling, it's just normal writing. So it's got uppercase at the beginning of the sentence and lowercase the rest of the sentence. And it's weird. It's weird to see. So, okay, look. If it would focus, look how different it looks. And it looks like amateur because of that. And the font choice, and yeah, it's just a little bit off. Like, everything about it is just a little bit off. And it's not like make or breaking my experience, but it could be better. And I feel like if I started with the Viz volumes, which I wasn't going to do because I just was getting these from my library, and most of the volumes that they have are the Changyi release, I would have warmed to it a little faster, I think. Yeah, I mean, here you can see, like, look at that. If it would focus, look at that font choice. It's just, I don't know, it's rough, man. It's rough. But yeah, basketball. It's a fun time. I'm glad that I'm reading it. It was one that I've been meaning to read for ages. And I think my library has most of it, if not all of it. So once I get to the later volumes and they don't have it, I can, I can either request it or buy it digital. Is this available digitally? I don't. Inoi's stuff I don't think is available to. I don't want to buy it. I just will request it because okay, I said it before. Like if this got a re-release, like the new fancy ones that are coming out in Japan, I'd consider picking it up. It's like I am enjoying it. I do think it's good, but I'm not. I don't want to invest money into the singles right now. It's just like low priority for me. But yeah, I mean, it's a solid sports series. If you like Haikyuu, there's a lot of stuff that, like, this is, well, I mean, sports series in general had already established, but it has a lot of dynamics that are very similar. I will say that the rivalry between the main character and between Hinata and Kageyama is done better than oh my god, what is his name? Oh my god. Why is my brain like forgetful? Sakuragi and Rukawa. I think they're, at least so far at the 20 volumes, they're rivals, but like they don't really interact that much. They don't feel like teammates either at this point. They don't get along. And comparatively to Haikyuu, where I don't want to compare the two because they both have their good parts and their bad parts. But Haikyuu establishes this rivalry, but at the same time, there's the expectation of the teamwork, and the rivalry never goes away, but they realize that they perform better, they do better when they are working together and are able to make it work. These two never, like, at least at 20 volumes, they haven't gotten to get it to work. They're just still at each other's throats and ignoring each other and like just not willing to work with each other, which sucks because they're on the same team. And maybe like later on it's going to be a big thing that like, oh my god, our main character actually passed to him because he realizes, we will need to win the game more than me showing off that I'm better than this guy. And maybe that'll be like a big dramatic reveal. I don't know. I haven't read that far, but I think the rivalry aspect of it is done better in Haikyuu. I may be blasphemy to say, but I'm gonna say it. To answer your question, Zen, is basketball a sport you'd enjoy seeing on the television? Probably not. I don't think we have televised basketball here. If we do, I've never seen it. We don't. I mean, we do have televised sport. We have the footy season is on right now, so AFL, Australian football. The final, well, the semi-final was tonight. Geelong versus Brisbane Lions. Didn't watch it because not into either of those two teams, and also I went to dinner after work and I literally just got home like 20 minutes before I came on here, so that's been my evening. And we have the tennis and stuff, golf, but not and cricket. Cricket's the other like major one, but we don't really have televised basketball, and it's never been a sport that I'm like super invested in. I've learned more about the rules because of manga, not just this one, like Kuroko and all the rest. But I don't know. I didn't grow up with it. There's the basketball culture here is like very different compared to the US and a lot of other countries. So maybe it'd be interesting to watch like on TV. But I personally have never seen it on TV, so I couldn't tell you. And I don't understand half the rules, so yeah. Me and sports. I'm not a sports person. I don't play sports. I don't follow sports. I'm just not good at sports. But yeah, so I read those 5 volumes. I followed that up with another series from the library, which is the final 2. Hi, Erin. Well, thanks for popping in. I was just talking about Slam Dunk, so you just missed it, but you can go back and watch it if you are wanting to. But the next 2 volumes of manga that I read were also continuing a library manga, one that I've really enjoyed, and I've been considering buying this. Also, okay, if you're not aware, Kodansha is having, Humble Bundle is having another Kodansha bundle sale for a bunch of horror and sort of horror adjacent titles from Kodansha. And this series, the 11 volumes that have been released so far, are available in that bundle. I do recommend it. It's like with all the Kodansha Humble Bundles, it's a great value for money, especially if you like spooky stuff and you don't mind reading digitally. But this is Inspector, volume 10 and volume 11. So, okay, let that actually focus on those. So I've been reading this for a little while. Obviously, I've read the first 9 volumes, and I spoke about the 7 to 9 last week, I think. Yeah, last week. So this is just a continuation. 7 to 9 was a lot of side stories, like short mini stories, because volumes 1 to 6 was pretty much one continuous story arc. Because if you don't know, Inspector started as a novel, and just a singular novel without, I think, any expectation to continue to a sequel. It left possibility for a sequel, but if it was just a one and done novel, I think that would have been fine for the author. I expect probably it sold better than they expected. So I think there's 4 books out now currently. So it's not technically a light novel series, I don't think. Maybe it is. I don't know the specifics. But the second volume, or the second novel, I believe, is just a whole bunch of short stories, which is what those 3, volumes 7 to 9 of the manga is. And there's one... there's a little... Well, actually, no. There's... So... Those stories had a bunch of short stories in there. If you've also... I'm going to talk about the anime after this, because I also watched that this week, and I want to talk about it. So if you're not familiar with this series, these are our main characters. We have Kotoko Iwanaga, the girl, and we have Kuro Sakuragawa, the guy. Kotoko, I think she's 19 in the story right now, and he's in his early to mid 20s. When she was 11, she was spirited away by yokai, by Ayakashi, and asked to become their god of wisdom. And she agreed. And in exchange, she lost her eye, so she has only one eye, and she lost her leg. As following legend of smart, wisdom, wise yokai of folklore, one-eyed, one-legged. So she was spirited away, gone for 2 weeks, and just kind of returned. The police found her on a park bench, minus an eye and a leg, and we're like, what happened to this little girl? But no real explanation. But now she is this goddess of wisdom for the yokai, and she works as sort of a medium between the two worlds. She a mediator between the yokai side and the human side. So she kind of helps fix problems. And It's an interesting thing because this is also kind of a mystery series, but not in the more typical sense, because obviously there's a yokai supernatural element here. So a lot of her stuff that she does is creating a believable fiction. So she comes up with logical excuses that explain away stuff that has actually been caused by yokai, in a way that humans will accept without having to believe in the supernatural, right? So that's a lot of her job. She kind of creates these excuses, these versions of reality, that normal people are able to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Sure, there's no ghost. Like, yeah, ghosts don't exist, so of course it was this, that, whatever else. Meanwhile, when she was in, so she spends a lot of time in the hospital because obviously she's missing a leg and an eye, so she has to go in for checkups all the time. When she's there, she runs into this guy, and just kind of falls head and over heels with him. But at the time when she first met him, he was in a happy relationship with his girlfriend. And he was visiting the hospital a lot because his cousin was a long-term resident there. She was very ill, or suspected to be very ill. And so she meets him, and then she's kind of just, living her life, whatever. 2 years later, she runs into him again, and she finds out that he's broken up with his girlfriend, which is sort of a surprise because they were very close. They'd been together since high school. There's the expectation that they were going to get married. They'd met each other's families, yada, yada, yada. And she asks him, like, why. Well, she's happy because she's in love with this guy. She's ready to pounce. And she's proactive. Let's just put it that way. And she asked, what happened. And he said that when they took a trip to Kyoto, and when they were walking around, they ran into a kappa, which is a yokai that lives in rivers. In folklore, they grab people and drown them and suck out their shikorodama, their life organ, from their anus, which is the actual folklore. If you've seen Sarazanmai, you'll it's direct reference to that. But they run into a kappa, and he says, my girlfriend was really afraid and scared because she didn't believe in anything, supernatural or magical or unnatural. But all of a sudden the coward got scared and ran away, and it's very purposefully written that way. And she's like, well, who was the coward in that situation? Was it you or was it the kappa? And it's revealed that the kappa was afraid of him, and ran away because he could sense that there wasn't something quite right with him. And we discover in the first chapter, this is not really a spoiler, that he is sort of a monstrous being in the eyes of yokai, because when he was 11, when he was a young child, he ate the flesh of two yokai, one being a mermaid, which granted him immortality, eternal life and youth, and the kandai? I can never remember this yokai's name. But it's a yokai who can predict the future, but once it does, it dies immediately. So the whole thing was his family historically was wanting to gain the power of premonition, to be able to see the future, and in doing so they would eat the flesh of this yokai. But every time they did that, the people who would eat it would get sick and die immediately, right? So the ancestor was like, okay, well, what if we ate both this kurai, it doesn't matter, flesh and mermaid flesh, so it will counteract the death aspect, because he will have an immortal body, or who like we will have the ability to live forever. And so there was many generations of testing, most of which were unsuccessful, all of which were unsuccessful, until his grandmother like ran the test one last time with him and like all of his cousins and siblings who are young, and he was the only one to survive, except for his cousin, who is the one in the hospital. And this is the cousin. She's kind of the villain of the piece. She wants to create a future and like a version of life that is kind of outside the norm. I think she's trying to create a god, or try to make herself be established as a god, and in doing so she will kill herself in order to gain the future that she wants, because you can only predict the future with this power if you're about to die. So that's how she tries to control the world, the people around her. And these two are trying to stop her, right? So in this book, Rika is this character's name. They're following her. They're trying to find her because she was sort of the main villain in the first story arc, and she disappeared. And so they're trying to track her down. We see a little bit of what she's been doing since the first story arc. And then the rest of these two books is a different story where our main female character has been brought into, I guess, adjudicating or judging this issue of succession for a very old, very wealthy family. There's sort of the CEO of a big conglomerate. And it's a mystery, and she's been brought in as a judge because the guy, the CEO, the owner, whatever, confesses to her that he asked a fox spirit to murder his wife 20 odd years before, because she was the one in charge, but she was kind of choosing a lot of... She caused a lot of stress for her family and also for the company, and it was like she was a very good businesswoman, but not very good person necessarily, and not a very good family mother stuff. So she was stabbed. She was attacked violently in the street one day, and he's like, "Oh shit!" And so the fox is like, "Yep, I murdered your wife. Just do this thing for me," which he did. So the whole deal with the fox is set. But now this guy, is in his old age. He's has a very aggressive form of cancer, and he sees that as his karma for murdering his wife, albeit, indirectly. And so he asks his 3 children and their spouses, their partners, whatever, to come up with a reasonable explanation, because the whole thing was that when this murder happened, all of the family, including himself, had rock solid alibis. No one could fault them or incriminate them for this murder. But he's like, yes, well, it was me, and I know that it's I know that this is a fox and that I caused this, but my kids aren't gonna believe that like a fox spirit killed their mother, right? That's just crazy talk. So I need them. I'm gonna tell them, like, I killed your mother. I want you to come up with a believable reason, an explanation of how I did so, and the sibling or their spouse who comes up with the best version of events gets the first pick at what they get in the inheritance, right? It's wild. It's crazy, but this is a great series. Like, I really enjoy it. It's quite funny. Iwanaga is, as I said, she's proactive when it comes to her relationship. She looks like a cute, adorable, well-to-do little girl doll. But she has a dirty mind and a dirty mouth. And that this guy, because they're technically like dating, but oh my god, his life is suffering. Like he's just like, oh my god, oh my god. Yeah. So Rin's comment, she's like, I was under the impression that it's a sci-fi. I was kind of under the impression that of the same thing before I read it. I had no real clue as to what it was about before I read it. And so when it was about yokai in the first one, I'm like, why didn't no one tell me about this? I had never heard of this before. Huh? What? Oh, okay. But yeah, so this is actually really good. Volume 12 just came out, but these 2 volumes are sort of a complete arc in itself. So I don't know if volume 12 is going to be additional side stories or the start of a new story arc or what, because I haven't read it, obviously. And it literally just came out this week or last week. So, but yeah, it's great. I will show you some of the art. And the novels have not been, I'm going to take this. The novels haven't been brought into English, which is kind of a shame. I'd read it. Sounds interesting. But oh my goodness, poor Sakuragawa. His life is suffering when your girlfriend is Uenaga. But yeah, so I recommend it. I think it's great. This is one that I would be willing to pick up the volumes for myself for the collection at some point. Who knows when or if that'll happen. But yeah, it's pretty good. I'm gonna see if I can find a page with yokai on it. There's not a huge amount of yokai in this particular story. I mean, there's the fox involvement, but most of it's just the siblings fighting amongst themselves and so much attempted murder plots. This family was not getting along, so it kind of isn't a surprise that this mother was murdered. But yeah, so check it out if that sounds like something you'd be interested in. It's pretty great. And if you're not wanting to buy the physical volumes, as I said, the entire series of this 11 volumes so far is available via the Kodansha Humble Bundle sale that they have on right now. So yeah, check it out if that sounds like your thing. Now, finally, last manga that I read, the last thing that I read for this week is one that I picked up from that local comic store that I was talking about earlier. One that I've been wanting to read for a while. It has a lot of really positive hype around it, and I just didn't get around to it. It's not that I didn't want to read it, and it's short. I think it's only going to be 3 volumes, so I wanted to get on it. It's so my thing. It's a historical romance. It's beautiful art, Victorian England. Like it's got a lot of G expectation like ticks. But this is Goodbye My Rose Garden by Dr. Pepperco. This is a Yuri title. I think it's going, as I said, it's either 3 or 4 volumes. And I was wanting to get it. This is a 70s release. Beautiful. Okay, also like, okay, so this is a Yuri historical romance about a young woman, young British woman, and her like maid in waiting, main maid, whatever, lady in waiting, whatever it's called. It's set in 1900 in England, but this young Japanese woman who becomes the maid to this British woman, because she moves to England in order to follow her dreams of becoming a novelist and achieving things that she wasn't able to in Japan. But she's now stuck in the very rigid social class system of Britain, which has impacted her life greatly. But okay, if the art is not the same, right? But it would not surprise me if like five 5 years down the line, it was revealed that Dr. Pepperco was just Karamori in disguise, because this is Victorian England, maids, beautiful women, beautiful scenes. It's like a Yuri Karamori. It's great. It is great. So obviously it's a Yuri, so these two characters grow closer and, become more not intimate in a sexual sense, but like more personally intimate with each other and become very close friends. But yeah, oh my goodness. Okay, so, and other people who've reviewed this have also said, kind of all of a sudden, a lot of the main conflict of this is about the homophobia of the era. Like, this isn't, compared to a lot of Yuri and BL as well, that kind of exists in this world where it's just sort of, oh yeah, nobody's going to question this, or if it is, it's sort of hand waved away. No. Okay, so our main female, like the British girl, she is kind of ostracized from society because there's very vicious rumors around surrounding her about being attracted to women and being a lesbian. And most notably with her governess, who was another Japanese woman who may have ties to our other girl here, coincidentally. And so she's yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who judge her and kind of make jokes about her and are disgusted by her. It's so good. It's so beautiful. I love it so much. I love it so much. Like, I knew I would enjoy it, but dang, it was good. Also, there's a plot about, as I said, this author and writing and novelist. But look at this art, okay? If it would focus, look at this art. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I mean, the thing is as well, for our Japanese character, she doesn't really see an issue with like having feelings for another person. Like, love is free, right? So regardless of class differences, or if you're both the same sex, if you're both men or both women, like one of the things they talk about was Oscar Wilde, right? So him being arrested and imprisoned and then dying alone. It's, oh yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's not cool. Homophobia is not cool, but like, it's interesting to see it portrayed in a manga, especially a Yuri manga, which very often is just kind of selling this dream, this idea. But yeah, it's beautiful. These characters are great. Their eventual relationship is wonderful, I'm sure. And you can really see the beliefs of an era, especially in such a rigid social system structure, especially very reliant on social classes, the upper class, and then the serfdom, as it were, is great. Is great. And then, yeah, ooh, check it out. It's beautiful. I also really like the fact that, yeah, so the whole idea is this woman asks her to, they meet at a publishing house, right? This Japanese girl is trying to get her work published which is a no-go. 1, because she's a woman. 2, because she's unestablished. 3, because she's foreign. Not really. I don't think the British presses were ever really going to take a chance on that, unfortunately. But she's very outspoken about, like, well, why shouldn't you publish me, and I deserve this, and blah blah. She's very forthright. She knows what she wants, and she knows that she can achieve it. It's just the prejudices of other people that are keeping her down. And she impresses this woman, Alice, by doing all of this, by being very outspoken. And Alice is there she says that she's there because she writes reviews. It's pretty obvious that she's a novelist, and most likely the novelist that this Japanese character is very infatuated with, she adores. But she asked her to come join her staff as a maid, and in doing so, she's trying to influence her and expose her to British culture and the upper social classes and things like that. But she asked her, like, will you be my maid? And I have a request. I want you to kill me. And she's like, what? And she's like, I want you to kill me. You can make it look like an accident, but I want you to help me die. And she's like kind of freaked out, but ultimately she agrees, because there's an element of, well, sure, she wants to die now, but maybe I can help her not want to die in the future. So that's, and it's revealed over the course of the volume that the reason that Alice wants to die is because she doesn't want to bring shame to her family as a lesbian, and she doesn't want to be stuck in a loveless marriage with a man who, may care about her and respect her and whatever, but she'll never be able to reciprocate that, and she doesn't want to ruin everything, as it were, unfortunately. And we don't know. At 3 volumes, there's a lot that can happen. A lot happened in this volume. So if you're looking for a short, interesting Yuri, if you're a fan of historical fiction, check this one out. It kind of reminds me a lot of a sort of a counterpoint, is the BL, Blue Morning, which is about a young lord and his butler. Longer title, covers a little bit different topics, but same time period, although that one's set in Japan in the late Meiji, early Taisho period. It's Meiji. I think it ends just when Taisho is starting, so pretty much the same period, and the whole social class differences, and the inherent homophobia of the period. It's really, 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 really good. It's really good. I knew that I would enjoy it, but it kind of blew me out of the water. I liked it a whole bunch. And if you like Haramori and you like maids, then check this one out as well, because it's a pretty darn good Victorian piece as well. I like in the author notes, right? They talk about, like, I'm putting in all of my biases, which is maids in Victorian England and frills and manners and all of these things. And I was like, that sounds just like what Karamori wrote at the end of in the author's notes of Emma. So, like, it's very reminiscent of that for me. And obviously that one's a heterosexual romance, but it is also dealing with class differences and the slow changing social values between the upper class and the lower class in Victorian England. It's good. But that is everything that I read for this week. Technically it's multiple books, but only really 3 manga series and then a novel. But yeah, so I am really happy that I was able to finish those things. I did actually want to come home and read some stuff before I got on here, but as I said, my plans just kind of didn't work out that way this week. Next week, I should be reading some more horror stuff. I have the Drifting Classroom to reread, so I'll be talking about that, I'm sure. I have some Umneko to read, so I'll be talking about that, I'm sure. Because next weekend, hopefully, we'll be recording for October's podcast, which is Halloween. Or spooky season. It's horror manga, so spooky season is afoot. I will also be talking about some digital titles in there as well. So I'll be reading some digital titles too. Oh, I didn't even talk about. Okay. I said I was going to talk about this, but I didn't. I forgot to. So this week I also watched the Inspector anime, which was a 12-episode adaptation by Brainspace. It's an interesting one because it's a co-production with Crunchyroll. Like, they actually put money towards producing it, and in the 12 volumes it adapts pretty much the entire first 6 volumes, that an original story arc, which is a mystery about this ghost that keeps, or this spirit that shows up as a faceless idol. She's got the frilly skirt and big boobs, but her face is all smashed because idol had died a couple months ago, but now she's wandering around Kyoto with a big iron steel beam and causing havoc. And so our pair is trying to stop that and find the source of that, and we get into the complicated past with Sakuragawa and his ex-girlfriend and the breakdown of their relationship, because she's also involved in this. It's really good. Like, if nothing else, the first arc of Inspector is like really solid, and you can tell that the novel was like fully realized, complete. It doesn't leave too many loose ends at the end of it. As I said, there's expectations for a sequel, or like there's hints that could go into a sequel, but it is quite fulfilled by the end of the volume, or the end of the story arc. There's also one of the short stories from the later volumes stuck into volume 2, or in episode 2 and 3, just to kind of pad out the runtime, because there's not really that enough content to fill the whole 12 episodes for the anime. Okay, so I went into the anime because I was like, okay, I just finished the manga. I know there was an anime in January of this year. Didn't watch it at the time. At that point, I still wasn't really aware of Inspector. I had seen Kim, or Frogchan on Twitter, talking about it because they've read the series, and I was like, okay, sounds interesting, I'll give it a shot. I put it on my watch later list and just never got around to it. And so I finally was like, okay, I'm gonna bang this out in the day, which I did. I watched it all Thursday, Friday, doesn't matter. And so I pressed play. And it had like the whole intro about this girl being spirited away and like her relationship with the yokai and blah blah, and then skipping to when she's 15 and when she first meets the male character, and it got to when she met the male character, and he didn't even have to say one word, and it was like, is that Miyano Mamoru? Is that my boy Miyano Mamoru? And it was, And I was like, why did nobody tell me that my boy, Miyano Mamoru, is Sakuragawa in this series? Why did nobody tell me? Because I'm the biggest fangirl. I would have watched this show way earlier. Why do people not tell me things? Right? But needless to say, I was like, well, this just made this a more fun watch for me to watch. I don't necessarily know if he's the best fits. I mean, Miyano Mamoru, I'm never going to complain about. He's brilliant. I love him in everything. He's great. Fabulous. But yeah, I don't necessarily I wouldn't necessarily have picked him for Sakuragawa. Just the voice. I don't know. Miyano Mamoru has a very distinctive voice. Like, if you watch anime in Japanese, you have absolutely seen him in a role. Some of his more notable roles include Light Yagami, oh my god, Tamaki from Ouran High School Host Club, Taichi and Chihaya Furu. Oh god, he's in literally everything, and I'm blanking right now, but he's in literally everything. He's in the current and the last season of Haikyuu. He's Atsumu Miya, one of the Miya twins, the one with the blonde hair. He is in pretty much every series. Like, he is, I don't know when that man sleeps. He is in everything, right? And he's Sakuragawa in this series, and I adore him. My very first anime was Death Note. I watched it in Japanese with subtitles. That was my very first exposure to him, and he's brilliant, especially when he's playing crazy villain. Like, he was a perfect choice for Light. I said this before, and I will say it again. I would not believe that the police and like everyone around him, around Light Yagami, would have believed that he was just a normal guy, that this whole ruse, that this whole murder spree would have been half as successful if Miyano Mamoru wasn't playing Light Yagami, because that man oozes charisma. He's so likable that you absolutely could believe that he's just like the likable, nice kid that just wants good for the world. So, like, you see, they know they were smart. But then also he does the crazy laugh just so well. What else is he in? He's in a whole bunch. And I mean, I've watched and enjoyed some pretty mediocre shows just because he's in the series. Only for him. Oh, he's Rin Matsuoka and Free. How could I forget? My boy, my shark boy. He's also JJ, Jean-Jacques in Yuri on Ice. He's in. I mean, I'm not overreacting when I say he's in everything. He is in. If he's not in it now, he will be. He absolutely will be. Yeah. And plus, he's a musician. Plus, he does like live action stuff. He just is everywhere. Does everything. He's everywhere. But yeah, he's this character, and I was like, I would have watched this so much earlier if I'd known. I cannot. I'm really. I mean, my bias is showing, but I cannot remember who that was the voice actor. I can't remember her name. The voice actress for Kotoko, but she was very like perfect as to what I would expect for that character. She was very well cast. She's currently she's got a main role in a couple different series this season. I'd have to look it up. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but it was a pretty solid little adaptation of that first story arc, or the main story arc of Inspector. If you like mystery, even if you're not into like the supernatural element, if you like mystery and kind of the process of logical deduction and stuff like that, I do actually think Inspector is probably like one you should check it out. The anime isn't like it's a good adaptation, but it doesn't look brilliant. Like, it's not beautiful. It's just a pretty bog standard anime with not brilliant animation. Like, it's okay animation. It's got some action scenes in there. I don't know what Brain Space was doing that week, but they did. I don't think they had their A team on this series necessarily. But yeah, I watched that. It was good. I'd give it like a 7.5. It wasn't, it didn't change my life. But it was a fun time. It was fun to see these characters like alive and interacting, and I think they got the tone of the series down pretty well. Ending song by Miyano Mamoru, unsurprising. Opening song, interesting one. I don't. Yeah, it's a hard one to pin down because obviously there's a supernatural element, but that's sort of the least point of the series. It is sort of a more of a cat and mouse game, with the sort of predicting the future, death. There's a lot of death. There's a lot of murder in Inspector, just by the way. Like, there's a lot of murder. So if you're not into murder, then maybe avoid it. But it's not gory or anything. Like, it's not gross or overt. Like, you don't see people murdering you. I mean, Sakuragawa gets fucking owned like a million times every time he does something, but he's not gonna die, so it's fine. We don't worry about him because he's fine. But yeah, I mean, it was fun to just kind of sit down and binge watch an anime because it's been a little while since I've watched any anime. I watched the first episode of Haikyuu. I watched the first episode of Jujutsu Kaisen a couple weeks ago when they came out, and I watched. I think that's it. No, I watched the new Higurashi, the first episode of that as well. Because it's spooky season, go watch the spooky shows. Haikyuu's not spooky, but I need to watch that one anyway. But yeah, it's been a while since I've just like sat down and watched like the entirety of a series, a completed series, and been like, yeah, that was a good afternoon spent. I enjoyed that. But yeah, I mean, maybe check it out, especially if you have Crunchyroll, if it sounds interesting and you don't want to invest in the manga. It's a pretty solid adaptation of that first several volumes. But yeah, so that's everything that I read and watched. It's late here and I need to pack my car for work tomorrow. So I need to go to bed at some point. I'll need to pack my car and then I need to go to bed. But hopefully everybody enjoyed. I know there wasn't a huge amount of variation necessarily, but I mean, it still took me over an hour to talk about all of it. So just me yammering on as per usual. But hopefully everyone enjoyed. I'm glad that we had quite a few people live, like in the stream whilst I was on, more than maybe average. We have 6 now, so there was 8, 9 before, which is like not huge numbers, but I am not a regular at this, and I don't expect a lot of people to tune in necessarily. I know it's an odd time for a lot of people, but thank you, Aisha, and everybody who does come in on a regular basis. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that everyone seems to enjoy themselves. Hopefully also, like, you may be interested in some of these titles now that I've talked about talked about them, whether it be this amazing Yuri historical romance or it's pretty interesting supernatural mystery thriller, or this fun sports manga about a sport that I don't even like know anything about, but it's pretty dang likable. Or my Russian travelogue, not mine, but the one that I read, and that one was probably, like, I'm not gonna say that I didn't like it, but that one I don't think I'm going to keep in the collection. I think that one goes to the donut pile, or I'll just return it. I'll get my sister to return it because I don't go to that uni anymore. But I'll get my sister to return it to the communal bookshelves of the university because yeah. Yeah, lots to read, as I said. And everyone also, like, again, if you don't mind reading digital, I do think that the current Kodansha Humble Bundle, it has like the entirety of Sankareya. It has all of Inspector that's been released. It has the Dissolving Classroom in there, as well as the Cat Diaries, Junjo Ito's Cat Diaries. There's Inuyashiki. Okay, so many of the bundles have Inuyashiki. I don't know what's going on. But also, the one that I'm most happy that hopefully more people will read is Kasane. Great series. Until Your Bones Rot, Can't You Just Die, Darling, Fort of Apocalypse. There's a lot of stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And if you pay the $25, $30 for the entirety, that's so many volumes of manga. It's such good value. I always get it, even if I don't get around to reading it immediately. Princess Resurrection also is in that bundle, which is good because that's another completed series. And Happiness. Oh yeah, she's Oshimi's vampire manga. We should probably talk about that. And I don't know what we're going to be talking about necessarily in the podcast as of yet. But also if you have questions for the podcast, be sure to leave them on Twitter in reply to my tweet about questions. You don't have a huge amount this month so far, but we tend to get more questions the closer it is when we're recording. But yeah, feel free to send in your questions. We love getting them. We do try to answer them to the best of our ability. And we both really appreciate everyone who does like ask us stuff and get involved. I know even though we've been doing it over a year, we are still kind of learning the ropes. So we're far from professional. But it seems that everybody, or for the most part, seems to enjoy it. So that's all we've ever wanted for Read Right to Left. But yes, I should go to bed because this is 11:15 and I am tired and it's been a long day and I need to pack my car and then I need to go to sleep and then wake up at 6 o'clock again tomorrow morning. No rest for the wicked, as they say. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you next week in the next video. Next week, obviously. I'm not going to put out a video tomorrow. I literally do not have time to put out a video tomorrow. But and Sunday is the beginning of the week anyway, so I will catch you next week in the video, whether that be another one of these. I might do a whole series review as well. Who knows? We'll see. Have fun reading. Let me know what you've been reading. If you have any reviews, recommendations, your opinions on any of these titles, if you read them or if you're wanting to read them now because I talked them up too much and set expectations super high and then I feel bad if you don't enjoy it. And yeah. Have a safe and wonderful weekend as well, everyone. I know for a lot of the viewers, it's just starting your weekend. So have a great Saturday. Have a great Sunday. Stay safe. Stay healthy as well. We're obviously in a kind of very tumultuous period globally and more locally as well. Be sure to try, and the other thing, buy local. Buy local, especially if you're buying manga. Try to support your local businesses like I was able to do this week. I'm very happy that I was, and I will be doing more so in the future. But yeah, I will catch you in the next video. Bye till then.